the sixth time in a row, a victorious edition of the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show. Your number 3 Oregon Ducks winners, 32-31 over number 2 Ohio State. Ryan Buckley here, along with Will Ortner, and behind the glass, Jordan Schultz. Fellas, what a freaking day. From start to finish, from before dawn, 6 a.m. in the quad with game day, to the very last second of Will Howard not getting down in time for a timeout, a total thrill ride. I'm almost at a loss for words, but I have to find some because we're going to talk about this thing for like an hour and a half. We're going to have a whole bunch of people. Dusty Hara, Andy Dirt Johnson, Anthony Newman will be coming up as well. There's so much to get to, but Will, I'll start with you. Just initial thoughts, reactions. As you watch this thing play out, what are you feeling right now in this moment about this Oregon Ducks team?
Well, I think it shows you that you can't judge a team based on what happens in September. Like, we all have these preconceived notions going into the year of what a team should look like. And then when they don't look like that, especially early on, we instantly go, oh my God, the sky is falling. This is not the team that we thought they were. And you can even throw my hat into this a little bit. I was nervous going into this game for the Ducks. I thought that there were some things that they were going to have to prove, specifically on that offensive line. You were going to have to prove that you could run the football and that you could keep Dylan Gabriel upright. Guess what? You didn't allow a single sack to that Ohio State defensive line. You ran for over 100 yards in this game with Jordan James. They proved, and the Ducks proved, I think, one, that they can win a big game under Coach Lanning, but they also proved that you need to reevaluate where you have them week after week after week, because it's clear that there's a reason why this team was ranked 3rd at the beginning of the year, and there will be a reason why they are ranked 1st or 2nd when the polls come out on Sunday.
The hype train left the station this season before the team was ready for it, too. It was before they had their bags packed. It was before they had things buttoned up, and there is still a lot of meat left on the bone. There is still a lot for this team to figure out, and we will get to some of that a little bit later on. But I'll be honest, Will, as I'm driving in here in the third quarter, I'm preparing to do an entirely different show with you because there was so much that was left out there that it just felt like this is going to be really hard to overcome. And I think that's where I start giving credit at the very top, because you know Dan Lanning has been hearing it for years now. He can't win a big game. What's his signature win? He can't beat a rival. Oh, he finally beat Oregon State. Great. They're not very good now. Like, the narrative is out there. Dan Lanning can't win a big game. He did not get the best effort from his team today, and he still beat the number 2 team in the country. For Dan Lanning to turn this effort in and to find a way to will his team to victory despite those missteps, I think, to me, says a ton about his impression on this program. I think this is career-defining for him.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to go quite far to say career-defining. I think it proves, and it
maybe validating.
There we go, because it puts out the narrative.
Defining is too strong, but it validates what you think you have in him.
Right, because what was the saying all offseason? Why is Oregon rated so highly? You've never won a big game under Lanning.
Show me. Well, you haven't done it yet.
Look at his rivalry games. Look at when he's played a top-tier opponent that had a quarterback, right? He has all these losses, and they're all really close losses. And it felt like at different points in this game, all of the mistakes and all of the ghosts from previous big game losses all came up again. You missed an extra point. You then chase it and go for 2, and then you don't get it. You miss a field goal. You have issues where you don't challenge what should have been an interception. You're not aggressive in that spot. And it felt like, oh man, here it comes. You don't score in the red zone. Instead, you get 3 instead of 6. Now Ohio State has the ball. They have 2 minutes. They're going to drive. This feels like this is where they rip your heart out. And in the biggest moments, your defense came up big for you, and it just felt like Oregon finally had to go through and push through all of the negative issues that they've had in the past to finally have that success. And now they know they can win the big one. Because guess what? This isn't going to be the only time you see this Ohio State team.
Nope.
You're going to see them at least one more time, and they're going to be loaded for bear, ready to come after you. There is a lot of growth that you can make, but winning college football games are extremely hard, especially when you're playing the number 2 team in the country. Everyone should be celebrating tonight responsibly and then getting ready for Purdue on Sunday.
Everyone should be celebrating tonight. That includes those of you listening out there. This is one for the ages for the program. This was billed as the biggest game at Autzen Stadium in the history of the stadium. People billed it as the biggest regular season game for Oregon, period. And they were underdogs. They were they were talked about as pretenders. We hadn't seen it. We didn't have a lot of reference points for both teams. The best one we had going in probably was Boise State for Oregon and Iowa for Ohio State. And, and even that, still really tough to judge. How is this team going to match up against another top-tier team? And we needed to see these guys head-to-head to do it. And I think what I learned right away is that both of these teams have the legit personnel to make a deep, deep run this season. The question is going to be, who's going to execute? Who's going to outsmart the other guy? Who's going to outcoach? Who's going to make fewer mistakes? Who's going to find ways to create more takeaways? And that pendulum swung back and forth all game. And a lot of the time, it felt like it was swinging away from the Ducks. And then somehow, some way, again, I'm not even sure how they pulled it out of the fire, but Dan Lanning and company did. They pushed the right buttons at the right times, eventually got it done. Schultze, I know that you live and die with this team, and your heart rate was probably a little bit like a Chihuahua with an espresso. What was going on for you during that game?
Well, to pull back the curtain just a little bit, as soon as you came in the door, you were screaming of elation. I came out chest bumped you. I don't think I've been as excited as a sports fan since like when the Seattle Mariners made the playoffs for the first time in 20 years.
You pulled your calf during that, didn't you?
I did. Well, no, that was when Alvarez hit the game-winning walk-off.
I knew you pulled the calf.
Yeah, and I jumped, and it was out of frustration, and then, I pulled my calf. No, but this is really the feeling of shaking off like that Oregon can't win the big game after losses to Auburn, after a loss to Ohio State in the big championship game, after an early season loss to LSU. I was at Michigan in 2004 versus Oregon at Autzen Stadium.
Beautiful.
It was only those kinds of teams, like just almost like the elite, but not quite there yet. It was the Michigans, the USCs of the world that Oregon had their big games against. So it was just such, I'd say, an unmatched feeling, honestly, ever. Really, now that I'm sinking into it, of Oregon getting that win. And props to Dylan Gabriel. We saw big game Dylan Gabriel today. There was nothing that I saw from him that I had any questions about. Really nice to see after last week.
Go ahead.
I think the most impressive part, and I'm sorry for cutting you off.
No, you're good.
I think the most impressive part about this victory is how few mistakes Ohio State truly made.
Yes.
The fumble was forced by you. Derek Harmon made one of the more incredible plays that I have seen all year, and it won't get enough love.
I was hoping to get to that with you. That was a man's football play.
It's an unbelievable play. He crosses the face of the guard that is coming over to block him, knocks his hands down. Then he has the agility at 320 pounds to bend back inside, hit the running back so hard that he knows he's going to go down, yet still be aware enough to take the ball and rip it completely out of his hands so that you have the ball, and the officials can't say, well, we can't give you the ball because we can't definitively see you take it beforehand. When do you see anyone make a play like that from that position?
I don't know that I ever have.
It's an unbelievable play by him.
I don't think I've ever watched a player from that position of the field just strip the running back. I've seen guys like a Jadeveon Clowney go through and blow up the running back. I've seen guys from a second or third level target that with some time to think about it and calculate that. I've never seen someone from that position do that.
And even on the Jadeveon Clowney one, they didn't block him.
Right.
They missed him.
Yeah.
They didn't not block Derek Harmon. Derek Harmon defeated that block. It was incredible. The other turnover that Ohio State has, your kicker somehow, some way is like, guess what, coach? At some point during the week, at some point during the season, he went up to Lanning and said, I can kick this ball really hard at that guy, and I will be able to hit them, and then hopefully it bounces our way. And you get it. The biggest mistakes that Ohio State made was forced by you. It wasn't Ohio State losing this game. Now, you can have your complaints about, if you're an Ohio State fan, what is Will Howard doing? How do you jump off sides?
Sure, they're going to have things that bother them,
times?
but they didn't have nearly as many missteps as Oregon
The
did.
mistakes that Ohio State had, or at least when they turned the ball over, was forced by you. And I think that's going to be the most impressive thing in this win, because that's something that you can hang your hat on and say, we can do to any team. We made them lose. We forced those turnovers. It wasn't them being sloppy. It was us making great plays.
Well, the Oregon Ducks offense asserted themselves in a number of ways that I thought was impressive throughout the afternoon. And Will, the offense seemed like they did a lot of what they wanted throughout the night.
Yep.
There were some familiar faces getting the run that we expected, but also some big people stepping up in moments that we didn't necessarily expect. And I want to start with Evan Stewart, because even before Trayshawn Holden got himself ejected from the game, Stewart was making plays.
Yes, he was.
And he had a nice game against Boise, but otherwise was kind of hit and miss, kind of hard to find, seeming like he just wasn't getting the same targets and the same volume as Tez. Tez was fine tonight, but Evan Stewart showed up and showed you why he was so coveted in the transfer portal. He gave that secondary fits, and it wasn't just getting open and catching easy passes. He made tough plays on really good balls. I was really impressed with Evan Stewart.
His touchdown catch where he's got the defender draped all over him, it couldn't be better coverage. Some might argue it was a defensive PI, and he still gets one hand on the ball and gets one foot down. It's an incredible catch by him. And I was talking about this in the morning with Luke when I was sinning and Satan. It was, will they use Tez as a decoy in this game? Because what have we been complaining about, or at least mentioning the last couple weeks? Tez has a disproportionate amount of targets compared to everyone else.
Yeah, he had, going into this game tonight, he had more than twice as many catches as anyone else on the team.
Right, and it wasn't necessarily because, these guys are dropping it or Gabriel's having bad throws.
No, and Holden and Stewart had some nice games here and there, but like Tez is at like 43 catches and the next guy's at like 19.
Every game Tez was open, or Tez was finding a way to get the ball. So it was a worry of, are you locking in on Tez? And so that left Stewart with a lot of one-on-one opportunities in this game, and he beat that secondary. And that's a really good secondary at Ohio State. There are multiple projected top NFL guys. Obviously, Downs is going to be a first round. There's a couple other guys on that defense that they talk about as possible first round, definitely day 2 guys. And so to see Evan Stewart run past them and beat them, on slants, but then be able to beat them vertically. He wasn't a one-trick pony today. He opened up the offense, and then they had to give more credit to Evan Stewart. So now you have to have a safety over the top. Well, that starts opening up the middle of the field for Ferguson. That opens things up for Tez Johnson. That allows the offensive line to get plus numbers, so now you can run the football more effectively. Evan Stewart having a monster first half is what opened up this offense, and it's why you went out and got him in the portal. You had 2 big grabs in the portal this year. You had Harmon and you had Stewart. And in the and Gabriel, 3. We're going to throw all 3 of them. Guess what? It still fits. All 3 of them showed up big time in this game. And that's why you go in the portal and you go grab these guys. That's what Dabo misses, and that's what Lanning isn't missing.
It was, and then, of course, for Evan Stewart to perform that well, it was something that I had been hoping for and asking for the last couple weeks. If Dylan Gabriel could just hit a couple more deep shots, how much it could open up what they would be able to do. And there were times against Boise when he had touchdowns that he wasn't able to hit. There was even last week against Michigan State, there was a time that he had Tez open and he underthrew him just a little bit.
He missed Tez in this game.
But his ability to deliver a couple deep balls, a couple long shots today felt like opened up things for Jordan James and for the run game. And again, I come back to that number of 496. Oregon did not play perfect football, but yet they had their way with what was billed as the top defense in the country. So who gets the credit for that? It does feel collective, but how much is Will Stein? How much is the guys up front? How much is just the collection of all those parts? What did you see?
Look, I'm a true fat guy at heart. It's the offensive line. They held up. They didn't give up a single sack in this game, and you ran for 155 yards on the ground. So you allowed your quarterback to stand in the pocket and find open receivers, and you also got that run game going. So Ohio State couldn't all of a sudden go into their heavy blitz package, which is what they want to do. They want to get you away from being able to run the football so they can scheme up all these crazy blitzes so they can get sacks in the backfield. They want you to become one-dimensional, and that offensive line, which had gotten a lot of hate, and they'd even gotten hate the last couple weeks when they didn't necessarily deserve it because of how poorly they performed the first couple of weeks. I am going to ride with my big uglies up front. They came out and they had one hell of a game, and that allowed your offense to do everything else around it.